James, sign in there, grab a copy of the contract. So we know who's coming and going from the class. Let's go ahead and get going. It's 5:30. Too early. So in that loop, the staff has gone ahead and removed all the old purchase agreements that were in there and dated. We should have the one that's now dated 9/24. That's the most recent one. So when you're writing the contract, you really need to take it. If you happen to find an old one, maybe we missed it or something, go look for the new one. That's gonna be important because it has all new kind of language in it. That's reflecting the changes that have resulted from the lawsuit and over the last. 6, 8 months, a year. It just happens, a lot of the changes in here, I think are for the better. It kind of outlines, it gives us a direct. Definition of all these little adding clauses that we've been doing, or, how do we handle commissions? As we know, the first thing you do is, we have a new, consumer guide out. That reflects the new lawsuit language, that talks to it. I don't have it here today, but it's in your doc loop. I suggest that you go ahead and open it and read it. The new consumer guide, all the old ones have been removed. Of course, the first thing, if you're representing buyers, you're going to have the buyer's representation agreement. We're already getting comments from, well, I have the language in the contract. Why do I need the buyer's representation agreement? Why do you need the buyer's representation agreement? It's state law. It's if the bill was passed and signed into law, now you need a buyer's representation agreement before you open any door. There's no end arounds, you can't skirt the deal. So what happens in real estate, everything is dated, unfortunately, we don't go meet our clients anymore and say, talk to them. We send it to them electronically, and they're all time stamped and dated. And so, one of the things that the division looks for when they audit you, if they ever come in and say, I want to look at your files, I want to look at your files, I want to look at your files. When they come in and do that, then they're going to look at your files and they go, well, wait a second. You signed the buyer's agency agreement the day before closing. You failed to do your duty. They're going to come back after you. They're going to look at timestamped information. So be careful, be cognitive of your responsibilities when you start writing contracts. So if you're the buyer, you're going to have a buyer's representation agreement. If you're representing the listing, the seller, you want to talk about how all buyer agents are going to have a buyer's representation agreement, and they're going to be talking about commissions, and the commissions are going to be reflected in the new contract. On your listing appointment, you should probably even have a new contract in front of you. So you could talk to them about, this is where it's going to show up in the contract, and this is how it's going to be presented. So right off the get-go, of course, I don't need to go through this. You want to ID the property, you want to define it, you want to tell me what you're going to pay for it. Are there any additional terms and conditions, home sale contingencies or anything like that? If you run out of space, you could use additional documentation. But so in here, it says the buyers acknowledge that the following broker was involved in the transaction on behalf of the buyer, that no other brokers were involved on behalf of the buyer. And after the buyer and buyer's broker, the seller agrees to pay the buyer's broker compensation in the amount of what? Is it 2%, 3%? Is it $10,000? What is that dollar amount? What did you talk to the buyer about in the buyer's representation agreement? That will be reflected here. Typically, you're gonna get on the phone and I'm gonna call you, James, what are you offering commission wise on the listing? I'm gonna say, hey, look, we wanna get this thing sold, we understand the value you bring to the table. We're gonna offer a 3% commission. And that commission will be based upon an acceptable contract. Make sure you say that piece. Because they'll give you they'll give you an offer and they'll cut the contract by $50,000-$60,000. And they're gonna go, I said, well, my 3%. Well, the seller's gonna go, are you nuts? Are you crazy? So remember, I called you back and I said, as long as we got an acceptable contract, we're willing to pay you 3%. So I understand you gave an offer of $50,000 less than our list price, so we are not offering you any compensation. That'll straighten somebody up real quick.
So would you just
James.
put in there, like, the amount of 3% of purchase price, cause I wouldn't wanna put a dollar amount in there, because if the price changes, then it's different,
Yes, you want to be clear.
right, okay.
3% of what?
Right, okay.
3% of my net, 3% of my gross?
Yeah.
What are you going after? So the clearer you are in a contract, the less questions will be raised. Now, the interesting thing here is when the first sentence that it says right here, the buyer acknowledges that the following broker, Keller Williams Greater Columbus, is involved in the transaction on behalf of my buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, and involved on behalf of the seller. There's nobody else involved. Now, what happens when people go out and they look and buy homes, a lot of buyers go out and they sign documents left and right, hey, show me a home, I'll sign a document. Show me a home, I go sign a document. But in your contract, so what will happen if somebody signs a buyer's representation agreement with me and I write the deal with you, I'm off the hook. I'm off the hook. And guess who else is off the hook? The seller's off the hook, because the contract says there's only one broker involved and it's me. So that is a very important part of the language here. Now, what happens is that if that buyer's agent is really obstinate, and they can go after the buyer. So the buyer puts themselves at financial risk. So, but here the contract states there's nobody else involved in this relationship. So. Now, one thing, if you look at the code of ethics, one of the things in the code of ethics, when you first meet a buyer and you don't know them, they're not your friend, there's somebody off the street, they called you on a street sign or something like that. One of the things in today's world, you should be asking, are you working with anyone else? Are you working with anybody? Have you signed any documentation that would prohibit me from working with you? Because I'm not showing you any homes because the state law says I can't show you a home unless you sign a representation agreement. I don't mind representing you, but if you haven't signed anything, let's get this ball wax rolling. I'm willing to work with you. I'm excited to work with you. I look forward to having you get into your new home. So right off the bat, the buyer's compensation is addressed. Now, we spent months. We spent months talking about how do we get this point across and why isn't it in the contract? Well, problem solved. All right.
I find it curious, though, in that paragraph right here with the amount of and then blank. You could put in 3%, but you're not specifying 3% of what? 3% of final agreed on purchase price?
Yeah.
It doesn't say that,
Well,
You could type it all in there, it's a text box. That whole thing.
but don't you think that that's,
it could be written better,
yes,
right now. If you have a question or if you have any doubt about how you're gonna get paid 3% of, you could write, 3% of the purchase price. Remember, we're typing now, so instead of going with a 14-point font, go down to an 8-point font and you get it all in there.
I
Get 'em-
think, I think the reason they probably didn't put like of purchase, like a certain percent of purchase price, because sometimes maybe it's a flat fee.
yeah.
You can put a flat fee in there.
Yeah, so that way if they said amount of blank of purchase price. Maybe.
Well, you could write in the amount of 10,000, a flat fee of $10,000.
Mhm. Yeah, but that might be why they didn't put like of purchase price in there, in that language, I think they.
The bigger the home sale, the more likely you're gonna see that language.
Yeah,
flat
If
price.
I'm working on $1.5 million home sale and some guy goes, I ain't paying you $45,000 to sell this home, and I said, well, good, you know, why don't I just take a flat fee of $30,000? He says, okay, all right, no deal, that's what I'm gonna get. You know? So it all depends on how you communicate with your client and, you know, I could say, well, here's the thing, this is the value I'm gonna bring to the table. Not every day, you know, realtors know clients that can bring $1.5 million purchaser to the table. I just happen to work around and been in the business 25 years. Or I work at Keller Williams Greater Columbus, and we have an office of 325 agents. You know, we have some of the top producing agents, and I'm gonna network with them. I'm gonna bring you a buyer. You know, what is your value proposition? What do you know about you? What do you know about where you work? How do you bring that to the table? So clarity, the whole thing, this is a purchase agreement. And so if there's any doubt, I don't believe that the courts would question what that 3% was for. Okay, we just went through 3 years of a lawsuit. I think it's pretty clear in the court's eyes what that money, what that percentage or fee would be for. Okay. So don't fret too much. But do pay attention to the language of the contract. So we're gonna go on. You know, the attorney clause did not change, but I would say, you know, even though it says if you don't put anything in there, there's gonna be 3 calendar days automatically assumed. And if it's a general standard contract, you may wanna leave it blank, but if it's a more complicated contract or a more expensive contract, you might wanna put 5 days, maybe even 6, 7 days in there. Because maybe you know, ask your client, do you want your attorney to look over this agreement? To make sure that your investment is gonna be protected. You know, I have, you know, again, I've been in the business 25 years, I have a lot of knowledge, I've gone through a lot of bumps and bruises in my time, and through that, it brings me a lot of experience, I could help you through it. But I'm not an attorney. So in here, you could add that, so make sure that you do explain the value of the attorney clause. Now, keep in mind, even if you put nothing in there, it doesn't mean that you can no longer talk to an attorney. And if there was something that went wrong with the contract. If you, at any time during the contract, if you thought you needed an attorney, you would advise your client to go hire an attorney. And so you kind of put the fire out quick. So but this is just to get the ball of wax rolling in the deal. All right, let's move on. Any questions? So if you do have questions, raise your hand. Let's keep this interactive. Because if you have a question, somebody else has got the same thought. They just haven't raised their hand. All right. So tell me. So, you know, this may sound a little ridiculous. Well, this is a cash transaction. They checked it right here. But oddly enough, the change in the contract says the contract is not contingent on financing. All right.
yep,
So a lot of buyers agents think, well, as soon as my client sells his house, he will have the cash. That's not a cash transaction. Okay, cash, if I could open my wallet and show you the dollar amount in my wallet or in my bank account, someplace along the line, that's a cash transaction, okay? So oddly enough, a lot of people come into the premise to write the deal as a cash to make it exciting for the seller to buy them. And then they turn around and change it to a financing deal. Now, what happens when that happens? What would you say happens to the contract? If I say I'm gonna offer you cash and then I turn around and say, hey, oh, by the way, Bart, I gotta finance this thing.
I makes the deal fall apart,
That changes everything.
yeah,
Okay, well, let's see. I need to extend the contract time because you're never gonna get your financing done if you have to finance it. And I gave you the price of $450,000 because you were a cash buyer. So okay, you can finance it, but now the purchase price is gonna be $500,000. Okay, so you get your, go ahead, let's finish. So it opens the terms and conditions of the offer. When you start changing things around, that's what happens. So in here, it also says, the purchase price in cash at closing. That there are ready and available funds to complete this transaction, so. A lot of times people will have just enough money to make the deal happen. And they go out and buy a car. Or they go out and maybe. I don't know, my kid broke a leg and I had to pay cash for the doctor because I don't have insurance. But. But. You have to have the liquid funds available that if you're gonna be financing, if you're gonna be going into a purchase agreement. You can't change that. A lot of times things happen. And the reason why this contract is a lot better than the old one is because it's addressing the things that happen. So I don't think it'll reduce the calls to my office. But it does answer how you solve the problem. Well, remember, the contract is based upon that your client was to have the liquid funds available to do that. If the buyer does not deliver such evidence within a stated period of time, the seller can terminate the agreement. So at the point where, if you're up here and you say I'm cash, you have an obligation to show me the proof of funds. And I need to see it. Oh, don't worry about it, I got the money. I've heard that before. That scares the dickens out of me. So. And just say, I believe you got the money, but I'll tell you, if you really want this house, you need to show me you got proof of funds so I can so I can negotiate on your behalf. If you can't show me proof of funds on a cash offer, the seller's never gonna think that you are a cash buyer. They think that you're faking them out. So you need to show me that money. Now, frankly, I don't care how much money you got. It's in your bank account, not mine, so it really doesn't matter to me. So it all depends, how's your conversation go? If you're gonna write a deal, write the deal. And it's the same thing here. If you're gonna go into financing, obtain financing for the purchase price, you're gonna check the boxes. And then typically, what you're doing is you're talking to the lender before you're even getting them and sending them your MLS links of homes in the market that they want. Because before I even get things going, I wanna know that you can buy a home. Back when I first got in business, I put you in my car. Back then, we put people in your car.
Yeah.
And then we would drive around and all that, and all of a sudden we look at about 10, 15 homes. And all of a sudden the buyer, look, we finally get to the lender and the guy goes, this guy can't buy a house. What was I doing for? So, lessons learned.
So what if you're in the situation where they are gonna be able to pay all cash, but they don't have to use a lender for it? So would you just put it in like additional terms? That's where.
Well, if you have all cash, well, where is it?
Right, but like for a home sale contingency that they can't do like a bridge loan or anything.
That's not a cash deal.
Right, but then it's also not, it's not a financing one either, right? Because.
Yes, it is. Now, to me, you don't have any money.
Right, right.
I mean. You gotta sell your home. Number one, it's not a cash deal. You need the funds from the sale of your home. Now, you may have, afterwards, you may have it. But I cannot rely that, number one, you're gonna get all the money. Here's the thing, let me see your loan payoff. Let me see your net to seller. Let me see how you listed the property. Let me see if it's even listed properly. Let me see if it's in good condition. But I'm not gonna do your homework to sell your house to buy mine. So,
But say you were the listing agent and helping them buy, how are you gonna write that in there if you put it up
so
for
you
an
did,
auction?
see? If you got something to sell, just tell me. We're seeing it. I mean, We worked through a deal today with one of our agents. 2 homes to sell to buy one. Home sale contingency, 2 home sale contingencies. But it was in the contract, so we had to figure out, well, how is this gonna go down? Yeah, one was the first private property, one was an investment. Now, if you have, in order to get your cash, you could say, I have a home sale contingency. And you could say, we will net, that $500,000 for that house. Within the sale, you might have $700,000 house and you might net your 500,000 and you could show me. And you could send me your lender. You could send some type of proof that this could happen to embrace your client's needs to buy. So you have to get creative. So if you're gonna submit a home sale contingency or something. Be creative and think through the process and talk to your client that I think this would be the best approach. So I know you have to get your funds from the sale of the house. Let's show them where that money's coming from. Let's show them that your mortgage payoff is only $150,000 on your $700,000 house. And your net to seller will show, $535,000 after closing costs and commissions on that deal, and so let's show them. Let's physically show them. Because it doesn't mean anything to the buyer, they're not gonna, what are they gonna do? But it's gonna embrace you. To make sure that you can do your best deal for your client, so think through some of those things. Get a lender's letter from your lender. Talk to the lender. Talk to Bill. Bill, how long will it take, Bill Skirvis with the Keller Mortgage, how long will it take to get a loan commitment for Barnabas to buy that home? How long is it gonna take to get that loan commitment? Because when we go down here, we're gonna talk about that timeline and how you have to meet that timeline. And if you can't meet that timeline, Tom was just saying, we didn't get the title commitment in time. That's another one. But you have to make an amendment to your contract and let the other agent know that we're not gonna be able to get the title commitment. We're not gonna be able to get the loan commitment in the right amount of time, so we're gonna need to file for an extension. Anytime you can't meet a deadline, file for an extension. Do an amendment to the purchase contract per paragraph 3.2. We're not able to get the loan commitment under the terms of the contract, and we'll need an additional 14 days to complete the deal. So back it up with the lender's letter, and then you want to submit it. But then over here, because it says if you don't perform, what does it do? The seller may terminate the deal. So the interesting thing about the purchase contract is that anytime you don't meet a timetable, if you read through this, I would take a pink highlighter. Anytime it says the buyer may terminate or seller may terminate, I want you to highlight that paragraph so you understand all the nuances of how to get in and out of a deal. Okay?
So is this?
And then no matter what side of the table you're on, if I'm the buyer's agent, I'm gonna make sure those timetables are met. If I'm the seller's agent, I'm calling you and saying, where's your loan commitment? Will you get your loan commitment's due Friday? Will it be in by Friday? Are you making those calls? It takes, what, 60 days, 90 days to close a deal? Like, I always say, how many of those you wanna lose a year before you learn your lesson? If an average sale is $360,000, 1839, that's $10,800 per $360,000 closing. How many of those you want to lose? If your goal is to make $100,000 this year, how many of those do you want to lose? How much overtime do you want to put in to accomplish your financial business goals for the 2025? All right.
How often does it take 60 or more days? The ones I've done have been like 30 days and 45 in the long run, 12 on the short end.
Keep it up. That means you can sell more homes and make more money.
I mean, the ones that I thought were taking forever, like these mobile home deals that took like 40, 45 days, I thought that was really long. I thought 30 days is average.
Whatever the average is, it is.
Okay. I was surprised.
So, right now you have a short inventory,
I've never had anything go longer than 30 days.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised.
you weren't around in 2008.
I
You know how long
was around-
listing-
I was in Florida.
If I was to sell your home in 2008, you know how long my listing contract was? 1.5 years.
Oh my God.
I'm not
During the
talking-
short sale period, it'd take you 12 months to deal with the bank to get a deal closed.
I'm not talking about from the time you list the time, I'm talking about like from the time you start this contract, and then go
Yeah.
into contract till you actually.
Contract to close.
Yeah, I'm not
Contract
talking
to
about like
close.
listing it.
Yeah. But you list it, you work it 30 days, you're in contract, you close in 30 days, there's your 60.
Yeah, I was.
And you don't wanna keep repeating that, that's the whole point behind it, but.
Oh, yeah, no, I was talking, and I'm working with buyers too, so I was thinking of contracts.
So this is something that they added also. The buyer shall maintain. Buyer's credit in good standing and liquid funds necessary. This is what we just talked about. You know, they get excited and they go out and buy $20,000 worth of furniture and. And they get the new car to put the new garage, you know, so, but then. By the time you get to closing, the bank pulls your credit again and says, well, wait a second, your ratios are off, and now you don't qualify to buy the home. Make sure you have that conversation. Why is this paragraph here? Because people do, I mean, this is lessons learned. You know, I get the call, I said, you know, the doggone buyers went out and bought a car and furniture before they close on the house and ruin their credit. I can't do anything about that.
Wait, this has to be mentioned in
You're,
the.
yeah, I don't ask you to raise your hand to admit that you did that, but go
Oh, no,
ahead.
no, I have a question. If your client like buys a car 3 days before closing and the bank doesn't want to give them the loan, and it falls through, do they lose their earnest money deposit?
That is always, that's a decision the seller will make. Now, keep in mind. They're adding these things because they're taking all the outs out of the old contract. Like, so your conversation with your buyer is, you will lose your earnest money if you do that. Because before, these paragraphs weren't in there. But the contract was contingent upon financing. Not about your bad financial decisions, it was about your overall ability to finance the property. And if you made that bad financial decision and screwed your credit and you weren't able to purchase and the deal died, you would get your money back. But now it says this. The new contract says this. So again, these are the conversations you want to have with your clients because you don't want your deals to fall apart because of the excitement of buying, you know. So, but I mean, real estate's pretty much a fun venture. Stressful, fun, happy, sad. You know, all your emotions are tied up into home buying and home selling.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So I see that it reads differently, but if you've got this wonderful seller who's generous and says, well, you know, they screwed it up, they can still get their earnest money back.
Yeah,
You still use the same paper of mutual. Release.
Yeah.
So that would be the same?
same thing.
Okay.
And see, the
It's just
contract,
written different.
the contract states, this is what happens.
Yeah.
What the seller does, and because they have a good heart, you know, hey, I understand you made a bad mistake, go ahead, here's your earnest money back. Let's go ahead and get this house back on the market, let's go find somebody that's, you know, can
Or maybe
buy
we've
the
got
house.
football or
So it's, the contracts lays the foothold. And how it's handled is handled between the buyer and the seller. You know, the buyer may just go, I made the mistake, take my earnest money, I can't do this. The seller may just say, I understand you made a mistake, take your earnest money, go home. And let's put the house back on the market, let's go find somebody else. So it, again, this is an agreement between two people, a buyer and a seller. Not two realtors. So. You know, so many times I get these realtors and all of a sudden they're like, they're furious. They're telling me how bad you are. Your agent should know better. Jeez. And sometimes I just have to listen. I gotta put the phone down and go do something else. I'm no kidding, you know, but, it's not between two agents. You have an obligation to tell the other agent what your client did. Right? But nobody has the right to yell at you. No realtor has the right to come back at you in a vindictive way. You could say to them, oh, wait, did you hear that? You hear that? And he's gonna go, what? And hang up on him. You know what? I don't need to be talked to that way. And until you can learn how to communicate in a professional manner, you know, goodbye. Call me back when you wanna talk. That's your, and nobody has the right. I have a lot of agents come in and they were just so beat up and verbalized by another realtor. And they have no right to do that. All righty. So as we move on in the changes of the contract. See again, get your pink marker out. Failure to buyer to deliver, the lender's written notification within 3 calendar days, the buyer received constitute a waiver of the buyer's right to terminate the contract. So in here, you have, this is, you have to understand this language too. Because the buyers have rights, and if you don't notify the seller, you lose your right. And it takes away that caveat to terminate the contract. So read these contracts, understand them. This is where it says the loan commitment, and I'm calling my buyer's lender and say, Bill, you know, how long will it take? And sometimes a realtor will say, you know, in 10 days, I'll get you a lender's commitment letter. Hey, understand how long it takes too, understand the banking business. You know, you're gonna need, if they've already been pre-approved, that may be so. But most loan commitments, by the time a lender gets the contract, looks at it, underwrites it, it's gonna take 14, 20 days. If you're on the ball. Generally, you're gonna go to 30 days, 25 to 30, 32 days to get a loan commitment. But that's all based upon the buyer. If a buyer has very challenging credits, it could take 60 days to get a loan commitment because they have things that work out. You need to understand that. So that's why it's so important when you have a buyer and you're working with them, talk to the lender. You want to talk to see how long. You know, if you have an A buyer, it might take 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Because they're clean, they got cash, they, you know, they have an 800 credit score. But what happens when you have a buyer that's got a 610 credit score and has a high debt to income ratio? Might take a little bit longer. So understand a little bit about the financing business. The only way you're gonna do that is talk to a lender and go to financing classes. Okay? Questions? So right there it is.
I have a common question. So when the buyer loses their goods, his privilege, his or her privilege to terminate, that means the earnest money will be on the line, correct?
Not necessarily, again, it all
So-
depends.
So what is, I mean, the contract will terminate
Mhm.
because he's not gonna be able to be approved for the loan. So how do I understand he loses his privilege to terminate what now? I mean, he is not gonna be able to purchase anyway.
Again, if he loses his privilege, then the contract says, as we get to the earnest money paragraph, the contract has the 4 different ways you get your money back.
Yeah, so basically it's, the implication wouldn't be the earnest money would not come back or half of it, or that's how we should understand it,
Yeah.
right?
So the earnest money, we'll go over that when we hit that. But again, if there's a default, a buyer default. And even though the contract says the seller gets the earnest money, what do you need? Need agreement between two people on where that money goes. It's just not, well, I'm the seller. That money comes to me, they defaulted. No, you need the buyer and seller have to go back to that agreement to disperse earnest money or a mutual release. We have two documents in one is called mutual release. You know. If you know how the parties agree to get rid of that money. And sometimes people don't like the mutual release because they're so angry. And I'll sign, I want my money back, but I'm not gonna sign a mutual release because they have plans to sue you later. But then there's another form, as a broker, we wanna get rid of that money, we don't wanna hold on to that money till you two people figure out how this dispute's gonna end up. So then we have a disbursement of earnest money. And the disbursement just says, all right, you get your money back, but I'm coming after you, I'm gonna hire an attorney to come after you. So again, the contract will dictate how that money goes back between the parties, and the parties have to agree to it in writing. Right? Everything's in writing,
So the mutual release, if you have them for the earnest money, if they sign that, that means they can't come after them for whatever.
you
But
know,
if it's just disbursement, then they could.
yeah, so you don't need a mutual release. We can agree to disperse that earnest money.
Okay.
Get it out of our trust account and get it back into whoever's hands it goes to. The disbursement will say the same thing, either goes back to the buyer or it goes to the seller. But it's not a mutual release of all financial obligations based upon the terms and conditions of the offer. So if I have, let's say, an $800,000 house and there's some type of default in here and we disperse the earnest money. And I end up, because the market shifted downward, not upward, you know, there is depreciation also in this world. What happens if the house sale sold at $700,000? And then the seller gets upset and says, I'm gonna sue you for that difference. You owe me $100,000 because you should have known better. Because the contract says you're supposed to maintain your credit. You're an educated guy, you're financially astute, you understand money, you understand blah, 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 you know, all sorts of things come up. So disbursement is one thing. It doesn't relieve legal obligation, and the mutual release is getting more towards the release of legal obligation to come back to people. It says it in there.
So the mutual release, if you're on the buyer's side, the mutual release protects your client better than the.
Yes.
Okay. So
Well-
you wanna do that. I get it.
Yes, yeah, if you're the buyer, you get that mutual release out. You know, everybody's sorry. You get your client's money back.
So you're saying the seller wanted for, like, maybe potentially wanna sue the buyer because the deal fell apart, now they have to sell it for 700,000.
They could. That's why we have a court system.
Yep.
What are attorneys gonna do without the courts? Become realtors. So now, remember before we were saying, I'll buy your house, I'm gonna release the appraisal contingency? Well, now it's in the contract. We don't have to look for that drop down clause no more and, you know, put it in there. This appraisal contingency contract is or is not contingent upon the property appraising. Now, if you're financing the deal, you better have a conversation with your lender. With the buyer's lender. So the buyer might say, yeah, it's not contingent. Better have a conversation with the lender. And find out, hey, we're looking at this property, he says that he does not want an appraisal contingency. So if it comes in and we're gonna go $20,000 over list price or $30,000 over list price. And the lender will say, he's got so much money, he can do anything he wants over list price. Or the lender might say, no, we gotta have that contingency in place because he's tight to the boat. He's got just so much money to buy this house. So again, this is the relationship you have with your lender. So no matter what lender it is, even if I met you for the first time and I don't know you or whatever, I'm gonna call you, you are now my best friend. Because what do I not want to do? I don't want to lose no deal. My time is as valuable as yours or as anyone else's. Okay?
I have a question. So say the lender, says, okay, it's not contingent, the lender agrees, that it's not contingent based on appraisal. So then after inspection, or even, like, you find out that there's a ton of issues, like foundational issues.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the lender care about that? Like that there's severe foundational structural issues?
Yes.
Okay, but,
But we're gonna do that.
okay,
We're in paragraph 3. So. Let's see. So if the appraisal comes in short, then it does, the contract does allow you to renegotiate the terms and conditions of the offer. So like if it came in, $30,000-$40,000 short, the seller may say, no, I'm not gonna renegotiate, the deal dies. Or the buyer seller may say, hey, look, I can come up $10,000 out of the proceeds that I have, liquid cash I have available to buy this house. And so we're gonna, maybe reduce it instead of 40,000, maybe just reduce it to 30,000 to make the deal work. So it's still negotiable. But again, it's all depends on the ability to renegotiate. And if you're gonna be doing that, then you better have your comps together, you better show what's really going on in the neighborhood, and validate what your client is doing. Because you are a part of that negotiation, it's you that's doing the deal. Just real quick, I don't know how many of you have gone through the contract. Have any of you ever used a demand notice? Demand for financing evidence. Have any of you ever had to do that? Have any of you ever had to demand that the earnest money be deposited? It's a pretty strong letter. I mean, I get calls and says, well, you know what, they were supposed to deposit the earnest money in 3 days, and now it's 2 weeks after the contract, they were supposed to do it, I go, well, what about the demand of evidence? Why are you playing around on this? It says if you have, I'm gonna give you 3 extra days. There's a demand of financing. In your document. If you don't get what you want according to the dates and times of the contract, you send the demand notice out. It gives them 3 extra days. And it'd say, hey, again. I know you want this deal as bad as we want this deal. If your client doesn't perform in 3 days, we're killing it. You're out of here. We're gonna put it back on the market and go back after the multiple offers that we had on it. Or put it back on the market. Okay, that's the power of the demand notice. Instead of waiting, if you're supposed to get it in 3 days, I'm calling you on day 2. How's the earnest money? Did you collect the earnest money yet? Because by now you probably should have. No, they're on vacation. I go, well, what does that mean? You don't have a phone? I mean, everything is, wired, you better figure it out. Because tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'm submitting my demand notice, and I'm gonna give you 3 extra days to get that money in, so.
I just have a question, and maybe I'm just being picky, but I'm gonna negotiate, we're in contract, but with a Keller Williams agent from a different place. But he just sent me this, says, I got the earnest money. And I said, well, can I have the receipt? He goes, I've never had to give a receipt. Why would I give you a receipt? Is it me being stupid or?
Don't tell me it's out of my office.
No.
No.
No. I made him say that he thought I was being.
I would say you better have a talk to your broker right away. You're putting your broker at risk, and I don't think your broker's gonna like you very much if you don't submit that earnest money. You're holding that earnest money and you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Number one, you're violating the code of ethics. You have in the Ohio Revised Code, you have an obligation to deposit that money ASAP. And you have an obligation to tell me that you got that money within 24, 48 hours.
Right.
And if
But
you
it's-
don't, that means you violated the terms and conditions of the contract.
Right, well, he just said,
Okay.
here, we've got it, but he didn't want to give me a receipt, I said, no, I want a receipt. So he just literally wrote it out
Well-
on paper, but.
Here's the thing you guys can do. It's, you know, you don't need me to solve the problem. You can pick up the phone. Every broker that is a manager, any managing broker, Dale is a licensed level manager in our office, and I'm the broker. You can call any manager and say, I'm gonna go, I'll call Coldwell Banker, and go, hey Newton, I need for you to provide me evidence that you received a $10,000 earnest money property on 123 Main Street in New Albany. Your agent is not telling me what I need to know.
I mean,
And so,
I got
You
it out.
talk to a broker,
Yeah.
the broker is 1,000,000% obligated to follow through.
Well,
Because
like I
if you
said,
ever go to the division, and say, yeah, well, I talked to Newton and he didn't want to do anything, he didn't do nothing for me. The division's gonna look at him and go, and you're the broker? You know, that's not gonna fly good, but when you get a call. If I ever get a call that says, hey, where's the earnest money? Like, Megan, did we collect the earnest money on this? No, we didn't. I get on the phone, I go, no, we don't have it. We don't have it. I'm gonna get ahold of the agent right now and I'll lay the ground rules. So, that's what I would do.
yeah, well, I mean, I literally got it out of them, I had, but then he literally wrote down in writing. I've never had anybody ask for me the credit card. What do you mean you have to have proof? It's like,
Taxes. So the day of closing is, and whatever's on the county auditor's record. Most title companies will tell you this, but now they've got it in writing. If whatever's on the day of closing, whatever's been reported at the county auditor is gonna be the tax valuation that they're gonna do the tax proration with. Okay, so if you close on a house and you close on the deal and then like a month later. Or six, you know, it's at the end of the year, it's November, and then all of a sudden, January, you get a tax bill. And the tax bill, they're going, hey, wait a second, you owe me money? Well, that's too bad. That's just the thing. You know, taxes increase and there's levies on the mark, on the bill, so up here, whatever the taxes are at closing is it. So if you're truly serious and you wanna figure, you can see what levies are on. All levies are posted on the auditor's site. And they will tell you what the new levy will be that was passed. They're gonna tell you what the increase will be, if you really look for it. Property improvements, this is it's more of a cleanup and an edit. When I first started teaching purchase contract, I would always say, you know, make sure you ask for the basketball pole and the billboard and the backboard. Cause they take them, you know. And you know, make sure that all the appliances built in and interior and exterior are there. Pool equipment, and hot tubs, you know, the hot tub's not attached, sitting on a slab of concrete. Now, it says right now, it says, no, that hot tub sticks around. But I'm telling you, if you have a house and it's got a hot tub and your client goes, yeah, that's pretty good, and you go, oh, don't worry about the hot tub because. It says right there in the contract that the hot tub is gonna stay. You better make sure the agent knows and say, hey, by the way, either that or you write it in the contract. Redundancy is not a bad thing. Don't tell me that it was in the contract. Well, if I'm the buyer and I say, I love that hot tub, guess what? I'm gonna write it in every paragraph. And I don't care how many times I write it. I want you to know that I want the hot tub. Okay, that's gonna be conveyed. Utility buildings, we had in the beginning, these buildings and sheds and that, well, the gazebo was a little harder, but. Sheds, we had a deal, there was a big garden shed out back, those really big, nice ones. And you know, it had to weigh about 2 tons. And when we closed, it got to the house, it was gone. And they're going, Mark, where's my shed? You know, we didn't run it in the contract. So he got his forklifts in there, and he picked that damn thing up and took it. It wasn't attached, it was just sitting on the ground. Don't underestimate the desire of people. Thank God I didn't have to buy the shed. But so, read through this, these are some of the things. Landscaping. I really never come across anybody taking a landscape, but I've heard of it. They just yank those plants out of the ground and they go put them in the new house. So in here, one of the things that, it says the refrigerator and stove and all that stick around. You write in your contract, a refrigerator stays. Well, what they do is that you said a refrigerator, so what they do is they take the one in the garage and they bring it in the kitchen. And that $3,000 stainless steel, double-sided ice making cube crushing, whatever it is. Refrigerator's gone. And they come back to you and they go, well, you said you wanted a refrigerator. We gave you a refrigerator. No, doggone well, that's a lack of integrity. And sometimes, when you get older in the business, you don't mind saying to somebody, well, you're lacking integrity here, aren't you? You're not really the kind of guy that I'm gonna do business with in the future. I understand that. That's okay. We probably won't do business in the future. Now they have this right here. If something is to be, my recommendation, if you have, if you have an expensive appliance, open the doggone door and get the serial number, take a picture, say, as per the MLS, at the time of showing, all the kitchen appliances stay, which includes the expensive refrigerator, or the 15 burner gas stove and the hood and all this stuff and the bar refrigerator and all that stuff. So you put the MLS number in here, so the following items shall be included, at the time of showing the MLS, 224. The expensive refrigerator, whatever model it is, just take some notes. You're walking through the house. Just take some notes, as seen at the time of showing. Just don't say refrigerator. Lease items, they clean that up too, because up here in the beginning, you would have, number one, you would say get rid of your lease items. Up here on the country homes, they have leased propane tanks. And what they would do is, even above ground, if it's above ground, it's a lease tank. If it's in the ground, you own it. But what they would do is, during the winter, here it is, January, and I need to fill my tank up. And I just spent $1,500 in propane. And now I'm selling the house and it's gonna be March and April. And you get there and you say, well, the damn tank's full. That's pretty good. You better, now it says you leave the gas behind. Before, they would call the propane company and say, suck all that gas out and give me a credit. And they would come out and do it. And then you get there and, all of a sudden you turn your heater on, the heater's not working. And it's, well, it's not that the heater's working, it's that they don't have any more gas. So. Home inspections. Do you know that you're supposed to give your client 3? Per the state law that was passed a couple of years ago, you're supposed to give your client a list of 3 home inspectors. Now it states it, and now you can go ahead and look them up right here. And do you know that it says in here is that you have to have a qualified inspector? And you know what it says here is that your inspector is not allowed in the house unless you're there. Oh,
Really?
Wow.
because unless you get permission from the seller that you don't need to be there, even though it's licensed inspector.
So what it says. Does it say needed, does it
So
say
you have
there
to-
you need to
you
give
have
for
to
the
make sure
inspectors?
that-
It says, the inspection test specific. You have to be a licensed inspector, your
Yeah, there's no.
your grandfather that is. Built homes all his life with his bare hands, is not a licensed inspector.
But what if the inspection company schedules it on showing times themselves? That's the seller giving them permission to go in without you, right?
The inspectors need to be registered with the board. Responsible to select and retain a licensed and qualified inspector and releases the broker of liability regarding the selection and retention and performance, to verify whether a home inspector is licensed. They can now go to the division and look that up. Where did I see that? Let me scroll down. So now it says the buyer could, I get this all the time. The buyer can terminate because this contract has material defects, which include but are not limited to those defects or conditions which may impact the health and safety and the habitability, use or value of the property, like basement, maybe a cracked truss or something like that. Those are structural things, radon. Those are health and safety issues, those type of things. But they may not terminate the contract because the wall was painted blue. And so before, we would get notices of termination, they don't like to paint the house. You know, they're looking for a way out. You know, nothing wrong, perfect home, but they don't like to paint the house, so they're gonna terminate. Well, no, you can't do that, so. So when you get those blind calls and somebody calls you like that, you're gonna say, well, did you read the contract? And by the way, if you're ever selling a home and you do not get this contract, go back to the agent and say, you need to update your forms, we will not accept an updated form. Don't be shy.
Oh, you're saying if you're selling home, they don't send you the updated purchase contract?
I got a purchase contract from 2008. I go, did you find that online? Yeah. What he didn't. He's got it on his laptop, you know, he's got it on his screensaver or something. The 2008 contract hasn't been around in a while. I'm like, well, where the hell did you get this thing? Was it you, Jeff?
No, but I need to ask the question why the other terms and conditions window got so small compared to the following leased items shall be excluded. I mean, it's just seems like our opportunity to insert language.
You may not want that shed in your backyard.
I'm just saying is that it's whoever's to inform, you go, you've, especially when you've got to use small font.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like there's things that could have been adjusted.
You know what, if you don't need it, don't use it, but you know, if you need it and it's not there, you go, well, now what do I do? But at the end of the day, I think the contract changes is for the better. Because it's covered a lot of things that we would have to get on the phone and start now. If I have to get on the phone now and it's in writing, it's a lot easier to talk to the broker and say you violated the terms and conditions than try to defend that the agent did not advise his client to leave the expensive refrigerator and put the garage refrigerator in its place. And then the broker goes, well, you didn't specify. I go, feel like going through the phone and doing one of those. So the buyer may not terminate because cosmetics, all utilities shall remain on unless they were turned off at the time of showing. So the inspection period, so if you're gonna do an inspection and you're gonna put 10 days in there, that means you get all your inspections down. Generally, if you're in a subdivision, you know, if you're doing Linkhorn or if you're doing whatever, whoever your home inspector is. They can get you know, like a typical construction subdivision house done in a timely manner. The thing is when you have like a rural properties and you need to test septic tanks, you need to test well water, you need to test well capacity is real important. Anytime you sell a farm that has a single well on it and it's an animal farm, you know, animals don't drink beer. You know what they drink? Tons of water. So you gotta make sure that the wells have capacity, and there's capacity testing that they can do to make sure that the well is sufficient enough to not only provide the house, but that thirsty horse or horses. Or cows or sheep or whatever they do, but they do, you know, they drink lots and lots and lots of water. And that means that pump is running constantly, so make sure that you know, all that testing needs to be done. Radon testing. When somebody goes in and inspects your home and the home inspector says, you know, the furnace should be tested. That means you need to go hire, you know, Gahanna Heat and Cooling to go over there and look at that refrigerator. It's not the seller's responsibility to do that for you. You don't go back to in my opinion, you don't go back to the seller and ask the seller, you need to have the furnace checked. It's in your contract to get all the inspections done within a certain period of time. So what happens, if he's saying that the furnace is bad, you know, and they're not furnace inspectors, go hire somebody, go, you know, spend another $80, $90, $100 to inspect the furnace. You might save your client tons of money, a new furnace is $3,000 to $7,000. And if you have a cracked heat exchanger, you know, that, all right, you know, that's carbon monoxide poisoning, and all these things start to add up. These are things that you need to be aware of, but if, so get all that inspection done. And then we just roll on down into the remedy period. What?
Can we back up for just a moment, please? This section 6.2, buyer acknowledges that buyer and other professionals are not authorized to be present at the property without real estate licensee unless prior expressed authorization. Does that include text, or does that have to be an email?
Yeah, no one is allowed on the property without authorization.
Correct, but I'm saying, will it text, is a text authorization, if the listing agent says, yes, buyer's agent,
Yeah.
I'm texting you.
Yeah.
is it-
I would get it in writing, yeah. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, will a text suffice, or do you recommend an email?
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. It's best to get it in email. So I'll give you a call and you say everything's okay. I go back to my computer and I get online, I send you a little note. Hey, I appreciate the conversation. I just want to document that you approved that we can do this at the house at this time with this group of people. So now you have it in writing, send it to them. If you have any objections, or you have anything to change, please let me know as ASAP. We're looking out there on Friday. We're gonna be there at 3 o'clock. Please advise us prior to. And if they don't, then you go out there. If the seller comes home and they're, going, what are you doing here? I was never told. I go, well, here's my email. I told your agent. I'm not here to upset you. We're here to buy the house. I told your agent. Your agent didn't tell you. No, it's different. So be careful. I mean, get it in writing. Everything you do, you should have it in writing. What saves agents when they have to go to the division or they have a complaint or a grievance at Columbus Realtors is their notes. Their text messages that they save your text at the end of the deal. If you can save your text messages, drop them into, what I just put a communication file. I have 123 Main Street, whether I do commercial or residential. I have 123 Main Street. If I'm talking to you about stuff, I'm taking your texts, I'm taking your emails, I'm compiling them, I'm putting a communication file, I'm putting all that stuff into Loop, and I'm going on, I forget all about it. And then a year from now, I get a call and there's a problem. I open my file, I open up the file, and I go, well, here's the communication line. You told me I could do it. Why are you upset with me? So that, you know who loves it, when you get called on the grievance committee, you have good notes, or the division of real estate, you got notes, or how realtors grievance board. And if you have good notes, you're well better off than if he said, she said. Because the clients don't keep good notes. Your buyer and seller do not keep good notes. But they have more power than you do. But if you have all your notes, you'll be able to, squash all that negativity. You had a question, Rima?
Yeah, so when we take a listing. And then and then exclusive right to sell a home, it has all that verbiage that the seller agrees to have all inspectors, contractors, whatever that's needed, appraisers to go into the house. So this is one thing, and also when the inspector is gonna go into the home, there is that showing time notifying the seller and making, so I don't know why, I mean, we are doing way too much for it.
You know, one of the top 3 violations of the division is?
What?
That. People entering homes without notifying nobody. The second one is agency disclosure, not getting it signed and not getting it signed in a timely manner.
So
Agency
if,
disclosure,
so if
No.
I,
Basic.
so if I use showing time.
yeah,
To notify the seller and the appointment has been confirmed, do I need to also call and ask and,
no, because you have documentation.
Yeah.
From showing time.
yeah,
And there, you know, if showing time makes a mistake, then we can go back to showing time
yes.
and say, I got approval from showing time to be here. Were you not notified? I do apologize, you know, do what you need to do, but, yeah. So if you have a showing time is pretty thorough. And I think they understand the complexity of not keeping good records. For realtors because of the, like, this is the top three, I don't know what the third one is. But, agency disclosure not getting signed. People entering homes without permission. Even, you know, I don't get it.
So question for that, so I've gotten requests like 2 minutes before they put in a request to show the property. What if I don't get to approve or like, I guess, respond to the request within that 2 minute time frame? It's like they're not able to enter the property?
No.
Okay.
Now, did you get permission?
I did
What
not,
happens if I'm out in the field feeding my horses and I get the phone call, they wanna see it, you know, I'm in the neighborhood, can I look at your house? That does not give them permission to enter the house.
Yeah.
Because they're outside, you didn't answer your phone. Well, that's not my problem. You did not get permission. That's pretty simple. You need permission, doesn't matter what the other side's excuse is, you know, they go to showing time, get showing time's permission, and then you can enter the house. But if you can't, you know,
So sorry, so sorry, so sorry.
what was that? We have spies. There are properties in floodplains. Agreement to remedy, 5 days agreement to remedy, I'm just gonna go over this real quick, if there's no change in the paragraph, it's pretty thoroughly written. One of the changes about the request of remedy is that if you have 5 days and you send over, I'm gonna send you a list of things I would like the seller to fix. And day one goes by and you don't get a response, that might be typical, they're probably thinking, shooting the fat where they wanna do. Day two goes by, I would give the agent a call and say, how are things going? What did your seller, how did your conversation go with the items that my clients want? If they're gonna pay this kind of money for the house, these are the things they would like to have fixed. What is your client, what is the seller's feedback? That's what I would do. Day three goes by, if you haven't done day two and you don't get a response on day three and you don't do anything, you're cutting your timeline off. And day four goes by and I called you, like, you know, I called Tom and he didn't call me back, so, you know, I'm sure Tom's a good guy, he'll call me back. And, and then day five comes and I go, well, don't worry, Tom will call me back. And then day six comes and you get a notice of termination. Why? Because it says right here. If you don't get a response from the seller on how to address the request of remedy, then the deal dies. It becomes a dead transaction. On day four, on number one, when I submit the request of remedy, I'm talking to my client, the buyer. And I'm telling them, here's how this is gonna go down. If they want you, they're gonna respond to it. If they don't want you, they may not respond to you. But remember, the contract is so safe, if they don't respond to you by the end of day five, the deal is dead. Now, here's our option. We can waive our request of remedy and move forward and still purchase the house. All we need to do is send over the waiver of the buyer's request of remedy. It needs one signature, the signature is for the buyer. So and then the seller can't do anything about it. Why? The seller didn't sign it. Well, so what? The seller doesn't need to sign it. The buyer waived their contingencies. You don't need two people to do that. So then you can move forward and you can purchase the property. But keep in mind, in an aggressive market, you know, someone says, hey, give me a call. If this deal doesn't work out, I'll give you a call. And they go, well, yeah, we're willing to pay $25,000-$30,000 over that list price to make this deal happen. So if it doesn't call, you have my word on it, you know? Or maybe here's a backup offer. I'll give you a backup offer because they don't have to tell me. Tom's got a backup offer. He's not telling me nothing. My buddy, Tom, you're not telling me nothing. What the heck? And so that's why this will happen. Because in the short market, people want these homes. They want good homes too. If you have a good home and you're buying a good home, you know, have that heart-to-heart conversation about how this may go down. But on day 5, if you have 5 days in the remedy period and nothing happens, then failure to buyer, so you have to read through this and make sure you understand how this is written. The inspection paragraph is the longest paragraph in the purchase contract. You should understand every paragraph in there. Warranties, very, 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 very important. Very important stuff. Wow. Well, I'm not going through the whole thing. Home warranties. This, before it was home warranty and you would put blah, blah, blah. But now it says a home warranty plan, the buyer selects or does not select the home warranty provided by whatever the home warranty is. Sometimes the sellers provide it and pay for it. And sometimes you could recommend your own home warranty. And then not to exceed, the seller is, or the buyer is not to exceed a certain dollar amount. Home warranties could be $600,000-$700,000 if you have multiple furnaces. Make sure you read your home warranty language about what the extra AC costs, what's the extra furnace costs on that. And in here, it's a disclosure. A lot of times, the home warranty company, if you use them, they will compensate you for a gift of gratitude. But anytime you receive any type of money from a third party, it has to be disclosed. And in here, it says, if I'm going to use HMS home warranty, it says the broker may be compensated for the services rendered and collected through the sale of the home warranty. So now, in the event, let's say, in the event you have the buyer does not select the home warranty. And that's null and void, it's not apply, that doesn't apply. Seller does not accept the home warranty. Over at America's Preferred Home Warranty on their application, at the bottom of all the little ticks, you know, I want that, I want this, your all the things you select in the home warranty. At the bottom, there's a waiver. So if your client chooses not to have a home warranty, have them sign the waiver of America's Preferred Home Warranty. So you go through all this stuff, you close the deal, everything's set and done. The importance of that is that, you know, 6 months down the road, they forgot all about this home warranty thing and something goes wrong and they're blaming you. And so, you know, you're gonna go, well, number one, you selected not, but number two, you also signed the waiver provided by the home warranty. But now I have a letter from an attorney that wants to sue you for the $50,000 to fix the things because they don't have the money to fix it, so they think you do. So they want to sue you. So now what happens is that in our E&O policy, each agent has a $5,000 deductible E&O. The other company pays for the E&O, and we have this, you know, if there's a case, the agent is responsible for the first $5,000 and then that's it. Now, the waiver part of it is if you do have to pay, there is a waiver in there, and this is the importance of keeping your records. If you have the waiver signed on America's Preferred Home Warranty, I think they pay 75% of your deductible. You know, so they're gonna pay $3,500 of your $5,000 bill. Okay, now, if you need it, that's a good deal. These attorneys are $200, $300, $400 an hour, they're not cheap anymore. I'll leave it.
So wait, you're saying if you had them sign the waiver, then you're still gonna have to pay money? And then the America's Home Warranty will cover it?
You pay less money. If you don't sign it, and you just say, oh, don't worry about it, you don't need it, then you are kind of, your obligation, your fiduciary duty is to advise them of the value of the home warranty. And if you don't advise the client of the home warranty, and they say, you know, then you're not doing your duty. The insurance companies will look at it that way. But if you do sign it, and they sign the waiver, well, I remember I sat down, I talked to you about all the things, you know, it was only $700. And now you're spending that $10,000 for that new furnace, it all could have been covered. But you chose not to, remember, here's your waiver, remember the contract says you chose not to, not me, you did. So these are the things that'll help. The other thing that will help you in litigation is your record keeping. Did you use the most current board contract? Remember I said if you've got a contract coming in from 2008, 2012, 2016, this is, I mean, I could probably go to our document and pull them up.
I'm sorry.
You kick it back and you say, I'm sorry, I appreciate your contract, but you rented it on expired, obsolete paper. You need to write it on the current Columbus Realtors Board contract dated 9/24. We won't accept anything else. You're protecting your client, you're getting paid quite well to make that statement. If you're getting paid $15,000 on a transaction, you better be talking like that. Right? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, so my question, I'm just back on the waiver thing, I think when you were asking, so if they do not select the home warranty, they do sign the waiver. They can still come back and get it?
Well,
We can
what
still.
happens, you never know if you're gonna get sued. But when you do, if you have that waiver in your file. You go over there, grab the America's preferred home warranty, that red document right there. So if you do have these things in your file. They have a policy is because you were thorough in your paperwork. That they will help pay and offset your litigation expenses. And the maximum amount, I mean, you have to pay $5,000, and you get $5,000, $5,000 for the maximum. So when you look at this right here. This is America's Preferred Home Warranty, right down here, it says waiver. Right down at the bottom. So you fill all this out. Who the buyer is, who the seller is, don't leave it blank. You fill it out, you put who you are. You know, put your name up here, and you sign it. And even if you don't use it, you rip this thing out, and you protect it like it's gold. It's worth $5,000, Stephen.
I guess what they're trying to say is, why would we get sued if we covered all those bases?
Yes.
Well, you're covering the bases, you're proactive,
Right.
lawsuits are real.
Right.
You don't get sued the day you sign this, you get sued 10 months, a year from now. When they figure out, I don't have enough money to do a job. So, and then you pull that out, and then our E&O will look at it, well, you did your job. And you would have a purchase contract, make sure your residential property disclosure is filled out properly. You have this waiver signed, and you put it in your loops, there's two more in it. We should have that covered with our normal documentation. So keep that in mind, just sign the body, have their, you know. I was on a phone call today with an agent, and the gal says, I don't want a home, I ain't giving a home warranty. There's no way I'm giving a home warranty, I'm paying for that, they're going to buy that house as is, I go. All right, well, you know, I just want to let you know that, you know, this is an option for you, it does protect you in case something happens. Nothing's gonna happen, I don't care. I go, good, all right, well then let's go ahead, I'm gonna have her bring over the American Preferred Home Warranty, and we're just gonna have you sign the waiver. That you have elected not to do that, just so we have record of it for our file. She said, all right, you give me that paperwork. I go, this made her $5,000. You know, just in case, because she's already obstinate. She doesn't want it, she doesn't think nothing's gonna happen, I hope the dickens that nothing happens, but boy, if it does. We have it covered.
You're talking about a seller who is not providing the home warranty, or the buyer is not buying?
The buyer did not advise,
Okay, the buyer.
you're the
is not.
listing agent. You're the listing agent,
Mhm.
you have them sign that waiver. Wait, that's you, the listing agent. Because
How
the
is
buyer never sues their agent, they always sue the listing.
it-
I never see the other opposing party sue the other realtor, it's like, well, that was their agent, they should have advised them differently.
But at
What
the
if they're
same
not
time,
offering a policy?
What's that?
As the listing agent, if you never even offered a
Yeah.
policy, which a lot of people don't right now.
Get it signed,
Still
So,
the
get
woman
signed.
signed.
So wait, I'm confused. I thought you were saying that as the buyer's agent, you should have that signed. Now
Should
you're
you have it
saying
signed by either a wife, seller, or buyer?
So I would say the way.
But I
So
mean,
you're the buyer's
buyer
agent.
might-
I'm the buyer, you're the buyer's agent, and I go, I want the house, I want to eliminate any type of financial pressure on the seller. I don't want the home warranty. You go, you don't want the home warranty, right? Let me tell you about the home warranty. This is all things it's gonna protect, this is how it's gonna protect you in case anything breaks. I don't want the home warranty. You understand? I don't want it. I go, okay, well then let's do this. Let's put this right here. You sign right here where it says, you see where it says waiver? You need to sign right here. It says, at least, all this is telling you that I presented it to you. And you chose not to buy it. Now you just say, in case there's a lawsuit, in case, I'm not saying that there always is. There's always a few every year, okay? There's always a few things. But those that have that. I mean, it's a big sigh of relief.
So would you have it?
So
done
whether
as
you're a
buyer or
buyer's
seller?
agent,
Yeah, we're selling.
I mean.
and if you're a
I think-
listing agent and you say, I'm not offering it, just say, hey. Sign a waiver.
I
What's
can
the deal?
understand if I'm a buyer, the buyer's agent. I can have my buyer sign the waiver. If I am the listing agent, with what right do I have to send it to the agent and tell him, have your buyer sign it if they don't buy a warranty? I'm not offering a warranty. If I'm not offering, if my seller is not offering.
Here's the thing,
a warranty.
I'm a listing agent, my seller said, hey, I ain't signing it, I go, okay, here, sign right here, so he says, seller.
Uh-huh.
And then I call you, and they say, you know, now you're the buyer's
Oh,
agent.
I'm gonna start with the seller, he's not offering
Yeah.
the home warranty.
Well,
Oh,
waiver.
okay, now makes sense.
Now, if you're the buyer, I'm gonna say, well, if your client doesn't want the home warranty, my client is an arbiter,
Okay,
will you sign the waiver?
okay.
And if he says, no, we ain't signing nothing. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I gave you the opportunity to protect yourself too. And if you choose not to sign it, I'm ripping this off. This is the first thing I'm downloading and downloading, because once it's in download, it don't go nowhere, right? You can't delete it, you can't hide it, you know, it's in there. Okay, so both parties, and if you're offering a different warranty. Check with that warranty company on their waiver policy. But get it signed. It's a huge. It's a huge issue.
It is in backup in the purchase, but it's not in the listing.
Yeah.
Folder.
Here's something interesting. Timber, in the deed here, all timber, they added timber. Isn't that funny? And down here, the seller has not transferred or conveyed or reserved, blah, 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 or has knowledge of transfer, conveyance, or reserve of any timber. And then, of course, if you're gonna dig coal, I gotta go 50 feet underground to go get a coal vein. If I'm gonna do oil or gas, I gotta go about 100 feet underground to get, hit them veins. And if I'm on a farm, most likely, if I don't see it, it ain't there, but you better find out if they have. But what you do see, we sold a bunch of land up there in, Harrison Road down by Intel. And all the homeowners, they harvest all their trees. Like, they sold the property, premium price, they got another $50,000-$60,000 for these trees. Timber. Them logs are, you can get some money for logs. You know? That affects value of the property too. If you ever buy a big farm out in Athens, Ohio, and they just timbered it, you just lost a bunch of money. You just lost a bunch of money. Well, how much did you harvest? Because there's always a forester report too. It tells you the type of wood it is, value of the wood. And saying, you want to sell this land, and it's gonna take another 10-15 years for them trees to grow back up where it's harvestable. They took money away from you.
So you have an option.
That's why they do it anyway.
You have an option here to convey it, and then there is there an option to convey it, and then it looks like there's the option to not convey it, is that correct?
No, if you have land and you have timber on it, before you list it, get rid of it.
Okay.
Because if I don't see it, I don't know what's there.
So basically, it goes with the property if it's there when you go to see it and you write the contract. You can't come in and cut it down. Like,
So if you have you're signing the yard and the trees are there,
they're with the property.
Okay, it sticks with the property.
Yeah,
If
okay.
I come to you and you go, hey, Barnes, we're gonna list this house, I see you got 15 acres, boy, you got some pretty trees out there. And you go, yeah, I'm gonna have them all cut down, I'm gonna get some money for them things. And I'm gonna go, oh, you are? Let's go ahead and sign the listing agreement, when you gonna have them things signed, or when you gonna have them trees down? They'll come by in 2 weeks, and it's gonna take them another 2 weeks to get them out, okay? All right, good, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna sign the listing today, and then we're gonna go active 40 days from now. Because I'm gonna show the contract. If we list it today, those trees stick with the land. All right, did you convey them to somebody? Them harvesters will come in and eat that wood up pretty quick. The Amish come in, they bring their horses and ponies and they drag them out of the woods like, and they put them on their trailers and they get it out of there like, how the hell do they move that stuff?
Can't just put that in the MLS,
They're clever guys. What's that?
can't just put that in the MLS, someone retains the right to timber.
You could. Timber does not convey. So when you get the contract. You can put it in the MLS. The MLS is not a contract.
Right.
But if you're gonna do it. And you get the contract. You have to be sure that you strike the timber from that contract. Because I've already sold the timber. I conveyed it to somebody else.
So when striking something like that, do you have to refer to the page number, line number, and how are you striking that out?
It's just a counter.
Do you have to reference page number, item number, since we've got line items?
Just say, the buyer understands that the timber of the 150 acre. Parcel located out in Athens, Ohio, 123 Main Street. Have been conveyed to a third party and do not transfer with the sale of the property. All right. Then moving down, utilities, we already talked about that. Surveyor, I get this a lot too, and I'm just one stickler on this one right here. If you have a survey, like these old properties, they have old deeds, they haven't been sold 30, 40 years. A lot of times when you go to close, they're gonna require a new survey. And now, keep in mind, a survey, it says here that the seller will provide a survey. Now, keep in mind, if you have a survey can be $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, depends on, how big this thing is. It all depends on the price of the property. Understand what the contract says. So if you're gonna have a survey done, I'll pay for the survey, but I want an extra $10,000 for the house to cover the cost of the survey. For the sale of the property, okay? Understand that it does cost money to have that done. Don't look lightly on that, because when a seller says, I gotta pay for that, and that's another $5,000 out of my proceeds. They're not gonna be happy. So I always say, if you want the property, you can pay for the survey. I do that all the time in commercial work. You send me a contract and says, you gotta pay for a survey.
So if you, but the scenario that you said before, the buyer would say, then I'm gonna cut the price by 10,000.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to pay for it now. So I get the listing, right, Remo? And then I'm gonna call Northwest Title or Chicago Title, those companies I work with. And I'm gonna say, hey, can you do a pre-title search on this thing? And now I know that this house hasn't sold in 50 years. Will it be required that the seller have a new survey done? Right? I know that day one. I don't need to go to closing to find out that we need a survey. I know that day one because I talked to my title rep. Right? I know the house hasn't been sold. It's not like, I see you bought your house 3 years ago. I see you've been living here for 50 years. Different conversation. And then I call the title company, I'm gonna find out. Do we need a survey? And they're gonna go, yeah, this thing is so old, we need an updated survey. All right, so then you're gonna call a survey company and say, well, how much, here's 123 Main Street out in the country. Where is how much will the survey cost? And he'll tell you, it probably costs $1. Or ask the title company, who would you recommend to do a survey, so we can figure out what this is gonna cost?
Usually
who's
the
gonna pay
title
for it?
company do that. Usually the title company will take care of this.
Survey, title companies have, a whole list of surveyors. They do this all the time. All right. All right, finish up here, folks. I appreciate your time tonight. Oh, earnest money. Okay. Let's just jump right to it. So what happens if the deal goes awry? You've got a couple choices. The earnest money deposit is either dispersed to the buyer. The mutual release or the disbursement fund. Or dispersed to the closing net escrow. So, it's gonna be dispersed and applied towards, or given back to the buyer, or applied towards the purchase price. It's gonna be retained and credited towards commission. Now, we do that now. So, but if we have a document that says, hey, we're gonna take that money out of the. So if we have a $10,000 commission and you only get and we have a $5,000 earnest money. You might only get a $5,000 check, and we take the trust money, transfer it over to the commission account, and then reimburse you for the difference in your commission allocation. Make sense? So that's what that is, or we have, our number two, we have written instructions. Remember, we talked about both the buyer and the seller need to have written instructions on how that money is going to be dispersed. Or you take it to court, and the final court order specifies on who gets the money based upon the language of the contract and the terms and condition. Or it's gonna sit into a trust account for a period of 2 years. And then it would be dispersed back to the buyer without notification to the seller after a 2-year period of time.
Can you speak briefly on?
If you have a third party hold it, you need to put it down here, so if I have the buyer and the seller says, I want my title company to hold it, then I'm gonna come down here. Who's the holder? It's gonna be Northwest Title, it's gonna hoard the money, and then you better have an acknowledgement and some type of document acknowledging that they're holding the money. Like, how are these terms and conditions are gonna be applied to the contract, if at all? The title company is not bound to the contract, they have different rules. So if the broker is tied to the contract, they have to follow the rules of the contract. So it goes to a third party, you have to get something in writing from the third party, how they're gonna handle that trust money in the case of a dispute. Most likely it'll be something similar like this. Commercial deals, it's cold blooded. Yeah, just like, their deals are like, this, if I call for it, I get it. So sometimes it's big numbers. So I want you to be aware of that. And so the parties understand the responsibility of obtaining and executing an escrow agreement from the holder. So that's what I'm talking about. You're gonna need to do some type of an agreement. And how the terms and conditions of 12.3 is going to be held, 12.2, 12.3. Here's a little definition, a little journal, a definition. The property disclosure, residential has or has not been completed, and it's the Ohio residential property disclosure. So the buyer has or has not. And then the lead base, what we're doing now, it's right now we're going to, if you have a property that needs a lead base disclosure, now they want you to make sure that you have received the pamphlet. When you guys get the lead based paint disclosure signed, do you pass out the pamphlet?
Yeah.
Yes,
Some do, some don't. So what we're gonna do now is in Dotloop, we're gonna have a single page document. One, you fill out, you have the autofill, and then behind it will be the pamphlet. So when I send you through Dotloop, when I send you the lead based paint disclosure, you're gonna have the brochure behind you. Right? So it's coming in a single set. So if they say, did you receive it? Yeah, we did. That's how we deliver it. Alrighty,
Quick question, I just filled out all the seller documents and the LPD, and it didn't look like it had a pamphlet attached to it.
No, we're doing it, we talked about it today.
Okay.
This just came out, so you should have been doing it anyway. If you read the current lead-based paint disclosure, there's a box in there that says the agent did give the buyer the disclosure, and you're supposed to check it off.
Which agent? Fire agent, so.
Not, but, well,
The buyer,
the
Okay,
yeah, the buyer.
buyer gets it. But you have to make sure that you get it, because there's a box in there that says you did it. A lot of it, everyone checks it.
With the paper copy in that drawer has all, including.
The trifolds, yeah. Now we have something that talks about dower. So if you didn't know that you were married and you tried to sell a property and you forgot to tell your wife. Or your wife forgot to tell a husband, let's be fair. There's an element called dower right, so you're gonna need to get the dower right release. Or
It's fun during the.
That's only on, I mean, there are only few states that has that. I mean, not all states have that.
we're on states.
Yep.
We're old school. So Ohio is one of the states that still has dower. So. Takes one to buy, two to sell. I can go out and buy all the property I want. But if I ever wanna turn it over or start getting my capital back, I gotta go tell Ann. And she's gonna go, what? Is that where that money went? Just kidding, just kidding. All right, let's finish up here. Date and time of possession. Seller should maintain the property and closing. So now if the seller is to maintain possession of the property after closing, then there's an agreement that you need to have for the post closing agreement. And then if you're closing the property, you need to have, you've got a broom sweep it out. Get it cleaned up. So these are the conversations you must have with your clients. You have to have these conversations. You can't just run through that contract, get it signed and think, wow, they're going, because I can't tell you how many times people leave their homes a mess. And then the buyer calls me and says, well, what is with that person? I gotta clean this whole house out. Or, stuff left behind, or rural properties are really fun. They got all sorts of crap behind. So if it's supposed to be broom clean, now here's the thing, there's a walkthrough. If there's a walkthrough notice and you're not walking through the property prior to closing, like 24, 48 hours, and you're gonna meet up with your client at the closing table and everyone's happy and go lucky, and you didn't walk through the property to see if they did everything they said they were supposed to do, shame on you. You know what? You should pay for the cleanout. You should get over there 48 hours, 24 hours before closing and call that agent and say, well, we're gonna have a delay in closing. Well, what are you talking about? Well, your client never broke cleaned up property. You want me to say to the pictures? And the agent goes, well, it's not my responsibility. They get paid as much as you do, sometimes more. So if you have a walkthrough, you walk through the property. That is like,
So does as is.
you can't say you were busy. I can't buy it busy. Because somebody, I had to get the babysitter. I go, what does that mean? Don't you need this money to feed the baby? Then you should have made arrangements to figure the damn thing out. And I'm never that, of course. Sometimes I say things that I don't really say.
Say it in your head.
I'm a little more diplomatic, right? Was that Jeff?
Does as is have any effect on the condition?
But you see, now those are conditions. Those are conditions of the contract and as is. Now, Jeff, we're gonna sell this property as is, and my client The wife passed away a month ago, and the husband's going into a home. We're selling this property as is, we don't have the time, we don't have the money to clean it out. These are the conversations I'm gonna have with you before we even get the wheels rolling. Okay? Now, one of the things about as is, I always see, I could almost say, I always see. You have a contract, it's in the MLS, it's as is, and the buyer's agent comes in and it's as is, and they have the inspection. And then they come back with a laundry list of things and a request a remedy. And you're going, wait a second, it's as is. What happened to the as is? Well, we didn't know that. Well, it's as is. My recommendation is. When you write a contract. And it's an as is, I'm gonna call you and say, our as is contract says $10,000 risk money deposit. And in the event that you do the home inspection and decide you want a remedy, you lose the money, and it's not applied toward the purchase contract. That's the way it goes. Make it hurt. It could be 5, it could be 3. It depends on the house, but if it's an as is deal, don't come in the home. If you do the home inspection, it gives you the punch out list of things you need to fix. That's fair. Generally, an as-is home is sold below market value, is it not? And then I come in and say, I need $20,000 more. But most people are so excited to get a contract, they don't defend the contract. So, now that's my take on it. You can try it out. The next as-is contract you have as a listing agent, try it out, talk to your client. So take a little bit, say $3,000. We hold the money. In the event you do the home inspection and you come back with a list of things, you lose your $3,000. And it's not applied towards the purchase contract if you decide to move forward. It becomes the seller's money. So the $3,000 is written to Mr. and Mrs. Seller. It goes into their hand. And then if it's an as-is deal and you come back with a list of remedies, they get to go to dinner. Take me with them. I don't know, but what do you think of an as-is contract? What does it mean to you? How do you tell your client? Remember, this is as is.
So I had a.
You're gonna go, well, don't buy Mark's home, he's pretty rough.
I had a home in Dublin and it needed work, and so we put it as is. We priced it moderately. And the agent knew that it is as is. So she was very sensitive about that. She only asked for things that are like foundation. Things that are very important, and they're walking away if they're not fixed. And so my seller said, even though I'm selling it as if I'm willing to fix this, because I have to fix it anyway for anyone who comes along. So that's where you can find sometimes as is. So if you have I have a buyer who, and we're buying as is. I don't see it hurting that I send request, because we're walking away otherwise. That will open negotiation if the seller is willing to negotiate something, if there is something serious in the property.
So we go back to the contract now, the new one.
Mhm.
It says the cosmetic things are off the table.
Yeah.
It says that.
Yeah.
And it does say, well, you know what, maybe you have a right to terminate the deal. For health and safety and structural reasons. Okay, now what we need to do is figure out what that is. There's no definition for that.
It's what both parties agree on, right? It's always both parties agree on the definition.
Yeah, it's a funny game. We just need to pay attention to it. I think if nothing else, you're selling a deal, you get an offer and it's from another agent and it says as is. You pick up the phone and ask them, what is the definition of as is? I need to know your definition of as is. Because, oh, well, we're gonna do our inspection. If we see anything, we're gonna come back and or, you know, present you with a request or remedy. Well, okay, I mean, obviously your definition of as is a little bit different than mine. You know, then I need to know. Right? Because how do you negotiate? You come in and you moderately price, and then you come in and you beat them up again. On price. Take down another $20,000 to fix the basement, or 30,000 today, I don't know what they cost. Does that make sense?
Well, the appraiser might flag it anyway, right? If it's foundational.
We actually didn't have any problem with the appraisal. It, I mean, let's back up. We fixed it.
Okay.
So it was fine. Yeah,
So oddly enough. After all this conversation. The contract says. It closes out by saying. The buyer, hey, as a buyer, you know it's important to read and understand this offer before signing it.
nobody reads it.
You know, there's not much. And then it says, oh, by the way, if you're a seller, it's important to read it and understand this before signing it. Isn't that funny? But that doesn't prevent the conversation, does it? I could write it, I could sign it, but it doesn't prevent it from happening. You still have to follow through. You know, again, if it's an as is, if you're not, except, you know, this is an important document here, the home warranty. Definitely keep it in every deal, you should just sign it. First thing you do here, I want to protect you, by the way. The home warranty, you know, I know you don't like it, but it's gonna protect you. So, oh, I don't want it, well, okay, let's just sign the waiver, and I understand you don't want it. But let's sign the waiver. Oh, by the way, it's, oh, I don't wanna sign it, we say, it's actually a compliance document in my office, it's absolutely required. If ever somebody says I'm not doing it, go back to compliance. Go back to my broker. You wanna talk to my broker about this? That's absolutely fine. So I get a call from the, or I have to call the person, or the person calls me. Here's the thing, I'm going to my computer. I'm gonna open up my form in your file, in your document file. I'm gonna put a block right here. I'm gonna say, I talked to Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, and he adamantly refused to sign the waiver form for Reno Mazarashi. I tried to convey the value of the document and they refused to sign it. Mark Sullivan, Principal Broker, Keller Williams, Greater Columbus, 3:52 PM on whatever, I'm gonna do that. It was recorded. I have record of it. And there's that's the difference. A lot of times people will go, I'm not signing the agency disclosure. Well, it's a state law. Well, I'm not signing it. I say, well, I presented it to the broker, or I presented it to the agent, and the agent's client would refuse to sign it. And so you get a hold of me and I'll get in your agency disclosure, and I'll make a note of the agency disclosure. So when compliance looks at it, I'm gonna say, this is approved. I cannot make you do what you are required to by law. So if we ever get audited, they're gonna go, well, I see that you have this discussion with your broker. You know, that's okay. Okay? Again, they added, oddly enough, you know, they added legal and binding, some of this stuff is like, are you kidding me? They added, hey, this contract's legal, it's legal and binding. So those are some of the things in our purchase agreement today. So what do you think? Good stuff.
I think they're stating what we always say it verbally. But we always say those things verbally, but we never put that in writing. Probably they wanna. I mean, I don't see buyers and sellers read the contract